Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like. Thank you.
Podcast below in the description. Check it out.
Also, go get that Geology, baby. Geology.com/ham. 40% off your personalized skincare routine.
How easy are these things? They're small. They fit. Cool little packaging. Face wash, morning cream, supple skin for men. Don't let your significant other just look better than you and have facial awareness.
Like spatial awareness. Read the defense here, people. Joel Klatt was on the podcast. The full interview you can check out down in the description too. Here's what he said about the idea that Justin Fields is a one-read quarterback. Take a listen, then we'll react to it.
It's a total fallacy. Total fallacy. Justin Fields for back-to-back seasons was the Power 5 leader in passing yards through the air. Over 70% of his yards and production came through the air. He is as accurate of an intermediate and down the field passer as anybody I've seen in college football. And I saw Baker, and I thought Baker was hyper accurate down the field. Fields is hyper accurate down the field, right? Like, you don't do that. He was, again, number one in the Power 5. Totally different from Dwayne Haskins. By the way, guess what you cannot do down the field? Just be a single read guy. It wasn't just play action. They were doing a lot of different reads. They run a lot of read routes from the middle. This is something else that gets lost on game tape, is that they would send Olave, who's very smooth down the middle of the field, and they would run middle read routes. Well, part of the deal for a quarterback is that if you're going to run an intermediate or deep middle read route, you got to hold the football, right? Like, that's part of your coaching point. It's like you're going to have to buy yourself some time. And he can do that because he's 200 and close to 30 pounds. He's strong. Tacklers, tend to fall off of him. So I wanted to bring that context to your conversation of like, do you really think a one read guy leads the Power 5 in back-to-back years in yard production to the catch point, air production, if you will? It's just something to think about, because where I come from, to throw the ball down the field, you've got to read defenses incredibly well. You've got to understand how to change your trajectory and your touch in order to throw the ball accurately. There's a lot of things that go into it. And this is, again, I just don't get it, guys. I like this whole thing about like, well, Fields is slipping. I'm like, really?
Total fallacy, he said, and then really dove into it. Remember, this is a man that called 10 Justin Fields football games at Ohio State the last 2 years.
Well, this is an issue I've had since I've been in the space. You brought me into this space years ago.
Sorry.
And then
you're welcome, world.
Got to meet the brethren. And now I followed it very, very closely when I was a scout. Obviously, you end up talking a lot about mock drafts and, the Josh Norrises and Dane Bruglers and obviously the DJ. I mean, I worked with DJ, but then he went on he's become a huge star. He was immediately in Mel's and those type guys. Is you don't have the information that the scouting community does. And that's what makes Klatt pretty unique, right? We talked to him, and what did he say? Yeah, I'm about to fly to Columbus. Like, what are you going to do? He's like, well, anytime they get a new quarterback, I like to go out there and spend some time with Ryan Day and just feel the offense out. And what do you think he ends up doing? I bet he goes to some meetings. I bet he sees some installs. And you just develop this relationship on top of just seeing the nitty-gritty of a random spring practice. But then in the offseason, when you go, hey, Ryan, maybe during the week of preparation, you text him, well, Joel's getting ready for a game. I was watching Justin, and he missed these three guys in back-to-back plays. Like, actually, the play call for this, it was my fault as a play caller. The second one, that's on Fields. The third one, the wide receiver had no fucking clue what he was doing. Who gets that same information, right? John Lynch, Bill Belichick. Whoever's calling him gets the same spiel. Do you know who does not get that? I can have access if I really get it down. But if I'm just talking about it and I just watch it, I don't have it. You don't have it. Anyone doing these mock drafts may not have it. People that are going on TV, like a lot of people on TV, let's face it, are former quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks. And they view things, if you're Orlovsky or whoever, and he's even come out and said he likes Fields, so I'm not trying to – I like Dan, actually. At first he kind of bothered me. He's kind of grown on me over the time. But, like, if you're a backup quarterback, a decade guy, you view things from the NFL viewpoint, where they're not about projection. You don't view, like, this guy can be better in 2 years. He lives in the prism of, we're trying to get ready for the Steelers. We need to do this. We need to execute it. That's how coaches think, and that's definitely how, like, players think. where the scouting community and the coaching fraternity during this time of the year, you think big picture. I was talking to actually a young coach who actually who has thought about getting into scouting. He's a coach for a long time and was going to get into scouting. And he's like, was talked to a director on a playoff team, and he told him the difference of me and you is when you grade the film, you grade it on every play, on a scheme-based.
Did you do what you were supposed to do?
Your positive negative is based on did you execute the scheme. I base it on do these traits translate to the league, and in our scheme, does his physical abilities, can we mold that? So I never got obsessed. Now, obviously, if you're a 30% passer or something, even 50,
30. That's where John draws the line. 30.
That was extreme. I was trying to make an example of Josh Allen. I didn't like him. I didn't really like Lamar Jackson because they weren't that accurate, and they've been more accurate. Josh has been really accurate. Lamar, I think, has definitely exceeded expectations. Right? Obviously, he's a great runner, but as a passer, and he's still. I think he gets nitpicked a little bit outside the numbers, as he should. But he's been really good, and the Ravens hit a home run on that pick. But sometimes you see a guy throwing incompletion. Like Matt Barkley, when I was scouting. My issue with Matt Barkley wasn't that he would miss a throw. It's like, I think his arm sucks. Like, I watched Justin Fields, like, he misses a throw. I was like, God, you see he was throwing 99 miles an hour. To me, the question I would ask is not, can he make that throw or not make the throw? Clearly, he has the ability to make the throw. It's like, can he take something off it and make other throws? Can he only throw fastball? Like I'm breaking down his physical attributes, and then I give it to Kyle. Like, then you mold this. Like you're Michelangelo. I'm just bringing you the paint and the brush, right? And the paint and the brush are elite, like enough to paint the Sistine Chapel. And that's where I think people that love Justin Fields or last year Justin Herbert, they go, what more can you ask for, right? Because that's the knock on like Mac Jones right now is like, he just sees all the reads, right? Or he just knows 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like, well, that's great, but I'm not evaluating him on the scheme. I'm evaluating on the physical attributes, how that's going to come. And that's where I think there's a huge line of like the differentiation of people like me that have a scouting background, the scouting community, and then some of the former players that talk about it, and just kind of narratives and takes that, like, that's true. He's going to miss some throws. I don't give a shit. That would be my take in a meeting. Like, do we think he's inaccurate? Because if we don't, who cares that against? I remember back when I was tweeting a lot, they were playing at Northwestern or Indiana. It was one of those two games. I guess it would have been Northwestern, right? They played them.
Indiana
in the
first was
game.
At home. Northwestern was the Big Ten title game.
Well, it turns out like Indiana was good. They were awesome.
They were ranked number 9 in the country when they played that game.
Guy, there was talk about during the season, like, if you fire Harbaugh, could they get Indiana's coach to come to Michigan? Like, he's legit. Yeah, he's got a program. Then Northwestern, that first half, I remember tweeting, like, God, Justin Fields looks like shit. I had a buddy that does the area that texts me immediately, because a lot of scouts love Twitter. He's like, bro, I think you're underestimating Northwestern. They got tons of NFL guys. They have a coach that if Pat Fitzgerald this year would have said, like, I'm coming to the league, how many offers would he had? 5? So they have an elite coach who is a defensive coach, right? He's a defensive coach, and he's the head coach. And they have several guys that are going to get drafted on defense. He's like, I think you're acting like they're the little engine that could, like it's a decade ago. No, they're just kind of a powerhouse Big Ten team. And I think that's part of like when I say he struggled against Northwestern, the negative connotation there is it's Northwestern. If I would have said, he had a rough game against Wisconsin. Like, Jim Leonard, Wisconsin powerhouse, it happens. I think the Northwestern and Indiana, they're just viewed as like little engines that could. That's not the case with those two schools.
No, it's not. They're really good.
They were better. Like Justin Fields kills Michigan. He struggled against Indiana. Indiana's better than Michigan, right? Or Penn State.
Yes.
Indiana and Northwestern were arguably the second and third best teams in the conference. Northwestern was the second. Indiana was the third.
And Klatt in the conversation explained to us also why the struggles against Indiana felt like they were pressing, just trying to get to the national title in that game and prove it to somebody, because this was the 9th-ranked team in the nation. Remember, Ohio State needed a waiver to get into the Big Ten title game because they had not played enough games. So Klatt's explanation was there was some pressing there as well. But I think to go specifically to what he said, it might be that Fields' best quality is not his athleticism, right? It might be that Fields' best quality is his ability to throw the football. Too good of a teammate, too smart, John. His biggest problem is that he cares too much. That's the classic interview answer. But he made a distinction, not in that clip, but in our interview, Klatt, about the difference between Haskins and Fields, right? He said, yeah, they're both 70% passers. And yes, technically it's the same offense, but it's really not. The Ohio State offense that Fields played in was much more attacking. And that's reflected in the air yards. Klatt said he led the nation in air yards, like the distance the throw goes before it's caught, as opposed to Haskins, who got a lot of yak, and was still a 70% passer. So that's a significant skill, right? Like, if you told me, Guy, watch a few games, tell me what you think the hardest thing for a quarterback to do is, physically, I would say consistently hit the deep ball. Guys don't do it. I think it's part of what made Herbert so eye-popping last year was he was hitting the deep ball at the same rate that Russell Wilson was hitting the deep ball when Russell Wilson was on a historic TD rate. Like, remember early in the year last year, Russ, we thought,
on pace for like 65
had
touchdowns.
a chance to break the record. And Herbert,
he had like 12 touchdowns through 2.5 weeks.
Well, I remember I ran the numbers through like after week 4, week 5. Only Russ had more air yards in his touchdowns than Herbert had. Or it wasn't air yards, it was just total yardage in the touchdowns. Herbert's touchdowns were home runs. Yeah. And I think that's part of what made Herbert. That's why I said a few weeks ago, I think the Fields comp, like what could Fields look like as a rookie? I think he could look like Herbert. Like, I think that's how dramatic it could be in the right situation.
Well, one of the things I'm glad he brought up Haskins was because Haskins, now times have changed. I think like the way the real world's working, we use the word inflation a lot. Like a lot of things are inflated, mainly the dollar. Dwayne Haskins' stats, he threw 50 touchdowns. Now, part of it is like touchdown passes in college football are just inflated. Saban went on this rant I saw that went viral probably within the last month of like, even I threw up the white flag and we just got all in on offense, right? Well, Dwayne, and so historically, and you and I have talked about this over the last couple of weeks, that comparing him to previous Ohio State quarterbacks is kind of stupid because one, like in the early 2000s when they were kicking ass with Jim Tressel, they were like a run-based operation defense. Same with the Miami Hurricane. Like they like Craig Krenzel's and Ken Dorsey's. Like that, those were the college quarterbacks on the great teams in our youth. Tim Couch, not Tim Couch, who's the quarterback or the coach for Nebraska right now?
Scott Frost.
Guys like that. Yeah, guys, it was just a run-based college football was.
Yeah.
And Dwayne Haskins in 2018 shattered records through 50 touchdowns. But I think when we look back over to like this next decade, think how many major programs like Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, Michigan, maybe Michigan, Oregon, just whoever that have just historically, Washington, been kind of like run-heavy defensive programs over the history of like their best teams are going to have maybe not 50 touchdowns, but guys throwing 40 to 50 touchdowns.
Guys setting program records.
Yeah, and it's just I just think Dwayne might have been the first where we might look back in 2 decades and be like, yeah, like he just won a many, right? Who cares? He didn't have whatever he was missing. He's a bad athlete, and that's one thing Klatt hit on with the Haskins. Justin Fields is an elite athlete, right? He's built like a brick shit house, and he can fly. And he has a big arm. Like, the one thing I watched Dwayne Haskins, like, he had a good arm. I didn't think he, like, had some howitzer, right?
Yeah.
But his downfall truly was he was kind of a loser. Like, I mean, Ron Rivera begged him, and they gave him every opportunity, and he couldn't figure it out. Like, that has not been the MO on Justin Fields at all.
No, it's not. No. I heard John Beck say to Bucky Brooks a few weeks ago, one thing he didn't know about Fields until he started working with him, he was like, once I found out he was a baseball player, it opens up this whole realm of just the creativity a guy can have when he's really played another sport. And I don't know, maybe that's part of what we see with Joe Burrow. We could probably overgeneralize that, but when you watch Joe Burrow, if I said that was a star point guard, you'd go, okay, I could see it. Like, I don't know. There's something to that.
There are positives and negatives with that, right? Kaepernick was, and he could only throw fastballs. He couldn't throw changeups.
Pitcher, not a position player.
Wasn't Mahomes a pitcher?
All right, that was different. He had a good curveball.
What position did Justin Fields play?
Great question. Not sure.
See, that would be a question.
But you tell me the position, I can form the narrative.
Yeah. I didn't know till recently that Justin Fields was a big baseball player. I'm checking up his Perfect Game USA player profile.
the Justin Fields 2017 National Showcase. Second base, shortstop. See, I mean, doesn't shock me one bit, John. He's a big Russell Wilson. There you go. Done. You haven't done your Justin Fields draft research until you've watched him run the 60 in baseball cleats.
Are we still live?
Yeah. All right. Now we're not. Goodbye.